So again, my name is Santiago Morales, and I'm one of the managing partners at Pangea. Thank you very much for joining me today, this morning. Today we're going to go over Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance. And our agenda today is just a brief overview of Pangea, who we are, what is digital transformation, an overview, again, very high level, the benefits of embracing modern finance. And when I mean the benefits of embracing modern finance, it's not so much that accounting is changing. Debits and credits are debits and credits. They've been like that since, I think it was the 1300s when we came up with dual entry accounting. Modern finance is more the approach of unifying, of looking at your organization from an accounting and finance perspective, but not just your department. It's how everything works together and everything flows into finance and accounting. We're going to look at Dynamics 365 for finance, and we'll have a few minutes to hopefully answer some of your questions. Our goals today are to show you how to improve productivity and performance using Dynamics 365 for finance. And just to simplify this, I'm just going to call it D365F. Otherwise, it'll take me forever to say it every single time. How to unify data, or better said, not how to unify data, but the benefits of unified data. Reaching automated processes. We've reached a lot of, nowadays there's a lot of buzz with regards to RPA, robotic process automation. And it's not that there's a robot that's actually making the change or performing the action within an organization. RPA really means that how can we look at your business and your process and automate certain steps of that process using technology? So you might have Power Automate, one of the tools that Microsoft has to help you provide if-then statements. If a vendor is created, please notify Bob in accounting so that they can get the proper information for that vendor, be it a 1099 or whatever, or W-2 or whatever information is required in order to have that vendor properly set up. That's an RPA process, a very simple one. And you can get more complex, but that's a conversation for another day. Reducing operational costs. And when we mention reducing operational costs, the goal of that is unifying, and this goes back to my previous slide on the agenda, unifying your process, unifying your data. So a lot of our clients, when they came to us, they had many disparate systems, and these systems were great, but they were standalone. And so there was always a cost associated to integrate with these systems. And what we've seen, and this is not 100%, there's some systems that are critical for an operation that cannot be replaced or cannot be brought into an ERP, an enterprise resource planner. But what we've seen is that we can create those processes that were in the other systems and these disparate systems within D365 finance and operations, reducing costs for the organization and increasing visibility. And that kind of dovetails into decreasing operational expenses and financial complexity. Reporting, financial reporting is one of the most difficult, if you will, not difficult so much, but one of the most time-consuming processes within the finance department. Luckily, today we have many tools. Microsoft, I think there's one by a company called Atlas, that systems that will connect to your ERP and allow you to create fantastic, deep, rich reports. Utilizing Power BI as well, if that's something that you guys are interested in. All right, so I'm gonna jump over and start showing you Dynamics 365 Finance. All right, so here you go. So this is Dynamics 365 Finance. Now, just kind of a brief introduction into what is a digital transformation, and what is Dynamics 365. So is the digital transformation a marketing buzzword? Yes and no. So we have, as companies, have been moving to digitize for the past 40, 50 years. The process has been slow because the technology tended to be very expensive. So you went from the IBM servers in your room to personal computers, now to the cloud, where you don't have the server on site, or you don't manage your own server. It's managed by companies such as Microsoft, the Azure cloud. So the digital transformation that we're seeing today has really been accelerated because now the infrastructure that manages your business is now in a secure environment. It was still secure on site with you, but now in these data centers that have 99.9% uptime, backups and replications across tectonic plates, and it allows companies such as Microsoft to see the telemetry, to see how you're working with the system and identify if an issue occurs, they can immediately be proactive and fix it. In the old days, you had to download a service pack or a cumulative update. The systems didn't work that well together simply because you might be on version A, but in order to work with your ERP, you need to be on version B. That whole ecosystem has changed. Now that we're in the cloud, or the digital transformation piece, now those systems more and more are becoming fully integrated. Now, what is Dynamics 365? So Dynamics 365 is the umbrella that encompasses the Microsoft Dynamics business solutions. Within that umbrella, you have Dynamics 365, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, which some of you may have known as AX or Axapta. It was when it was on premise, it was called AX. Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, which was called on premise NAV or Navision. And then you have customer service, sales, marketing, project service automation, which is now going to be called project operations. So when you hear Dynamics 365, it's the complete ecosystem of all the Microsoft Business Solution products. Now, within the ERP side, Enterprise Resource Planner, you have the two ERPs that I mentioned earlier, Business Central and Finance and Operations, Dynamics 365. The difference between one and the other is quite vast. So Business Central is geared more to SMBs, small and medium businesses, or businesses with with not overly complex processes. Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations is geared towards larger multinational, multi-entity, or companies with complex processes. A perfect example would be Kanban. So if your organization is using lean manufacturing, Business Central would not be a good fit because it doesn't have Kanban out of the box. There are third-party plugins you can purchase. Now, Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations does have Kanban. Has additional features such as travel and expense, production floor, shop floor management. So and I mentioned this because it's important because everyone thinks like, well, it's just Dynamics 365. It's not. It's, as I mentioned, two different solutions, two different ERPs that, depending on your particular business needs and requirements, will be the one that's the best fit for you. We have a client that is for all intents and purposes, they're a municipality, they're an SMB in terms of the revenue they generate. But they decided to go with F&O, with Finance and Operations, simply because it had a deep set of functionality that they were not able to receive or were not going to receive with Business Central. So again, when you hear Dynamics 365, there's a little bit more the onion needs to be pulled back a little bit more to understand what is it that Microsoft is truly offering. Okay, so now we're going to jump into Dynamics 365 F&O. So what is the modern finance? And this is not a term I've coined. This is actually a Microsoft term. Modern finance is Microsoft's, as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft's approach to the managing of the business. The old silo approach, where every department was its own silo and they managed themselves in the manner that they saw fit, as long as they reported and the numbers were in line and they met their budget, worked very, very well when systems and organizations tended to be disparate. But now, as we move towards a digital transformation, as we want to integrate and simplify the operations across the organization, the modern finance approach is, it's not just, I need my numbers. It's more along the lines of, what do I do with my numbers? And how do I get my numbers quickly and easily to the people who need to consume them? In this particular case, we'll say the C-level suite. So we have an example of a client that just went live where they had 6 legal entities, and they had Each illegal entity they were consolidated. Each legal entity had its own accounting package. We implemented D365 Finance and Operations, and what used to take 3 to 4 weeks to consolidate financials now takes them about a day at most. And it's not because that D365 Finance is that much more powerful. It's just that they brought in everything under one umbrella, under one system. This allows the business owners to have visibility into the organization without having to wait 3 to 4 weeks. So we'll jump here. So D365 Finance. As I mentioned earlier, this is the evolution of Microsoft Dynamics AX, or Axapta, which was a product that was designed in Denmark and has now been rolled out to over, I think at the moment we have 60 plus what Microsoft calls a globalization. So out of the box, you're globalized for 60 countries, and they keep on adding countries as we go along, as the use cases come up. It's in over 140 languages. So it's an application that if you have a company in Denmark or Norway, and you have your base of operations in USA, you can have one shared services location. In this particular case, we'll say USA, to be able to provide services, your accounting and finance services, to both the Denmark and Norwegian operations. But the end users in Denmark and Norway will be within an application that is localized for their language, in their language, as well as to meet statutory requirements. And this is one of the key benefits and features of finance and operations if you're a multinational. Another key benefit, before I get into the finance side, is multi-entity. Let's see here, refresh. That's one of the things. If you don't click on the screen for a while, it'll kick you out and you just jump back in. So just bear with me for a second. Great. One of the other great benefits is the multi-entity piece. You can have as many entities as you want within the system. And each entity can be localized for its own particular country, as well as each user can have the language that they want to use within the system based on the entity they're in. Additionally, the intercompany, and this is one of the reasons that I mentioned this earlier, the multinational, the intercompany is one of the strong suites of the application. And for a finance team, or better said, for an accounting team, intercompany is always one of those challenges. So the do-to-do-froms, are they accurately being tracked? Can we create, how do we minimize jumping between entities so that operations doesn't have to remember to enter in a transaction in one entity when it should have been in another? So these are issues that crop up consistently with clients where the solution does not have a strong intercompany. D365 Finance, the intercompany piece, allows you to have what's called the centralized payments. And this holds true for both accounts payable and accounts receivable. So going back to another client, they have over 80 entities, and they don't want, each entity is basically, it's a standalone. They only send invoices to clients, and they do have expenses, but they don't want the accounts payable department to jump into 80 different entities during the course of their day to enter in transactions. So they have one primary entity that enters in transactions on behalf of the other entities, automatically creating the do-to-do-from. And then depending on which entity pays the bill, i.e. from cash for accounts payable payment, it'll create the corresponding do-to-do-from. We have manufacturing clients that they have multiple locations, one in USA, another one in England. And they sell each other products, even though they're owned by one private equity, they still buy and sell to each other. So in one entity, the USA will create a purchase order, which will automatically show up as a sales order in the UK entity, and vice versa. Now, if you're into manufacturing, you can create demand planning across multiple entities. And a lot of people, especially in the manufacturing sector, is a huge benefit if you have multiple locations, and each location is its own legal entity. So, for example, using our USA, Denmark, Norway, that's a land-based aquaculture farm. and they have operations in those 3 countries. And so they use the manufacturing suite. So when they need to identify what globally do they need to purchase, the demand planner looks across their whole organization and allows them and provides that visibility and the recommendation, allowing them to speak with their vendors and identify ways to improve pricing. All right. So when we log in to Dynamics 365 Finance, this is going to be your home page. Now, what you're seeing here, of course, is basically every single piece of functionality within the application. If you were to be an end user that only had access to accounts payable, you would just see that, or my internet still. You would only see access to what you have access to. So the security is very deep within the application. You can control access to every portion of the system as well as to individual records, i.e., let's say Jane in accounting and accounts payable, she should only see vendors A through C. So that can be controlled where any vendor that starts with A or B or C, that Jane is able to see them. Otherwise, she can't. And obviously, that's a ridiculous example, but it points out the fact that you do have a lot of depth and breadth in how you work with the application. So on my left-hand side here, we have modules. So these are all the modules that are available to you. And again, it all depends on your security. And since today we're going to focus on the finance piece, I'm going to look at accounts payable, accounts receivable, budgeting, cash and bank management, consolidations. The cost accounting is used mostly for the manufacturing piece. Expense management, fixed assets, general ledger, and I think that will be it for today. Oh, and the time and attendance. Additionally, if I click on my modules, you'll see that, I'm going to minimize this, it breaks out and it shows us all the available functions for that particular module within the application. I expand it all, it's quite a bit of information. I'll minimize it. Before we jump to modules, we're going to jump to Workspaces. So what are Workspaces? Workspaces are Microsoft's answer to simplifying day-to-day operations. What do we mean by that? Many times, as you're working within the application, I don't know if in Miami I'm having bad reception. I guess everyone's working from home, so it's taking the bandwidth hit. So Workspaces basically consolidate the day-to-day operations for a particular individual within one view. So if I open up, let's go here to accounts payable, you'll see here that I have my Workspaces here. If I go to vendor invoice entry, that's a workspace. Here, I can see information that's relevant to me as an AP clerk, an accounts payable clerk. So here, I could see my invoices that are pending, which ones are on hold, which ones are assigned to me, the journals that are currently operational. These are product receipts, pending vendor invoices. The nice thing about this is all this is configurable. So if you see here links, if I go back to my accounts payable view and I clicked on all vendors, I could publish my all vendor view or list as a link or a tile back to my workspace. So here in our options, add to workspace. So here I can choose what workspace and how I want to present it. And you can basically do that almost across the whole system. Additionally, we can create alerts that are unique to myself. And this is what we come through on the RPA side, the robotic process automation. Within F&O, Finance and Operations, Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, or I apologize, I forgot that Microsoft recently changed the name to Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Management. Finance and Supply Chain Management. So a little change there. So we can create notifications for myself or for someone else whenever a change is made here. That's a mini RPA. Additionally, using Power Apps, I can add an app right here, or Power Automate, which can pull data from somewhere else in the system or a completely separate application and present it to me in a format that makes sense to me, or makes sense to the organization. So here, some related information. Additionally, Microsoft has done a great job, and this goes back to the digital transformation. Microsoft has done a great job of integrating the Office 365 suite. So remember what I mentioned earlier, Dynamics 365 is the Microsoft Business Solutions The umbrella for Microsoft Business Solutions, Office 365 is the umbrella for their Office apps, Outlook, Teams, Word, Excel, so forth. In the past, the marketing speech for Microsoft was very, very simple. Everything worked together. The reality is it didn't. And it was always very challenge. Pangea's been in, we've been offering Microsoft Business Solution products for 15 years. It's always been a challenge communicating that to the client, saying, yes, everything works together if you are on the latest version for all your applications. And then even if you're still on the latest version, it might not still work together because there's certain plugins that it was always a little bit of a problem. And we always had to open up a support ticket. And it turned out to be more of a headache and a cost for the client. If you're on Office 365, you're on Microsoft tenant. If you're on Dynamics 365 Finance, you're on that same tenant. So now what Microsoft has done is it says, no, the systems now work because I can manage the back end. So by managing the back end, now Microsoft ensures that these applications speak to each other. And that's, don't have to be involved in any step of the process. And that's just for an end user, that's fantastic. It just makes life easier. Additionally, what Microsoft has done is you can export right here to Excel, but I do want to show you something a little bit more interesting, is the ability to export transactions to Excel and then publish them within, fill them out in Excel and then publish it back into F&O or finance. And that's one of the greatest things that our users now are seeing is they're really blown away. Because it used to be, well, I'll fill out my Excel spreadsheet with the journal entries of the month, and then I'll upload it using I don't know what application, depending on whatever ERP I have, or I'll type it in by hand. I'll hand it off to somebody else. So now using the Office 365 integration, I can go ahead and I can open up my Excel. It has a direct link to finance and operations, and I can fill it out and then publish it back. And if you guys would like an additional demo on that, I'll be more than happy. Today I don't have the time to go over that function, but you can also look it up online. It's actually a very powerful tool in our clients love. All right, so back to Workspaces. As mentioned earlier, the idea of the Workspace is to simplify and facilitate the end user experience. So going back to accounts payable, vendor payments. So if I'm in accounts payable and I'm an accounts payable clerk, I can create a view here of what I need to do during the course of the day. So that minimizes back and forth. That minimizes me having to jump from one module to the other. And at the end of the day, the core of all these systems, be it Microsoft, be it whatever, is to improve efficiency, improve operational efficiency. And in order to improve operational efficiency, we need to be able to provide the end user with the tools to do their job quickly and easily. On the right-hand side, you'll see that there's some Power BI reports. You can embed Power BI reports basically anywhere within the application, and I'm going to get to that in a second. All right. So I'm going to go here to the CFO Overview. This is, again, another workspace. And remember what I spoke when I mentioned that modern finance. These are all. So what is the idea behind this modern finance? The idea is to be able to grab that data that used to be in a million different applications and present it to the CFO, the CEO, the COO in an easy to understand and consume fashion so that they can make actionable items, or they can make actions on this information. So these are Power BI. By the way, everything I'm showing is out of the box. I haven't, there's no customizations. This is just how the out of the box Dynamics 365 Finance operates. So here, within the CFO dashboard, you'll see information that's relevant to the CFO. And additionally, and again, these are Power BI reports that are embedded, and you can add as many as you like. Additionally, you can create, these are filters that come default with the application. I can focus on something particular, for example, my current ratio. I want to drill into that. I can look at my revenue and expense insights, revenue by region. I can export the data. I can show it as a table. I can sort by organization ID, account category. Well, in this case, it's specific to this report. So if I'm a CFO and I'm looking at this report, oops, I might be looking at my numbers and I'll say to myself, wait a minute, what's going on here? So if I look here at my financial overview and I've decided that my current ratio should be higher, I can drill into identify why, what's going on, or my revenue, where's it coming from? This is my budget. So right click to drill through. So I can drill into that information. And this is what we mean by modern finance. The idea that I can now find the information I need and consume it so that I can work smarter and faster. We have our subledger insights, trial balance. These are, again, there's quite a few reports in here. I can look at the most common one, expenses by vendor. People like to drill into that. So this is, from a high-level perspective, the modern finance approach. All right, so now we're going to drill down, and now I've showed you workspaces. And by the way, there's many other workspaces that we can go through, and we'll be more than happy if you want to look at ones in particular to sit with you and give you an overview. It's just during the course of today, unfortunately, we don't have the time to go through each one, but this is one of my favorite ones. So, sorry, the cash overview of all companies. Companies that are multi-entity, this view provides deep insight into what's going on. So from a C-level CFO perspective, they can jump in here and they can see what is happening in my organization and what's my cash flow forecast. Everyone always asks that question, what's my cash flow? And here, I don't need to go and ask Bob in accounting or in finance, hey, can you provide me that information? Or make sure to send that to me once a week. Or put it in my email box, whatever the case might be. The idea is now that the CFO or the CEO or COO, they can go and look up that information whenever they need without having to go and bother other individuals. So that other individuals, it opens up their time to focus on value-added tasks. How many times have you heard someone in either finance or accounting complain that they're always generating reports? It takes time and effort to generate the reports, and then these reports are never read. So it's the book of reports. And so this is one of those things where it's more like, well, we don't need someone to go and generate these reports. Let them focus on what's important for them and the business. I have those reports. I can look at them whenever I want. All right. Additionally, we have deep reporting that's out of the box. So there's really three core types of reports, if you will, or reporting technologies, if you will, within Dynamics 365 Finance. The first one is SSRS, which many of you might be familiar with, SQL Server Reporting Services. A lot of applications use that. It's basically static. So you build the report, you create the fields that it's going to search for, and then you run it based on your requirements, or your dates and times, or due dates, depending on how the report is built. The other is what we call the Power BI reports, which is what you're seeing over here. Power BI reports, these reports are designed to be a little bit more flexible. And what they're doing is they're looking at data within your organization, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, whether it's data from the ERP or from some other system, and they're presenting it to you in a graphical format, but which allows you to still drill down and show it as a table. So you get to still get that deep information, but you start at that graphical and then you kind of drill down. And then the third, which some of you might have heard of, it's an application called Management Reporter. It used to be called FRX. So if any of you know that, I'm dating myself, but that was the reporting tool for Microsoft Dynamics Great Plains. I don't know if anybody here has used Great Plains. It was also the reporting tool for AX 2012. So the on-premise version of AX used Management Reporter as well as Great Plains. Additionally, Microsoft migrated Management Reporter to Finance and Operations. Now, I'll be 100% honest. I'm not the biggest fan of Management Reporter. But if you have simple financial reporting requirements in terms of consolidations, in terms of eliminations and so forth, Management Reporter is actually a very, very powerful tool. So An example, when I mentioned the client in UK that had six different legal entities and then consolidated, um, they're using Management Reporter, and for them, it's a fantastic tool because they're currently not doing complex financial reports. In the future, they might, and then might recommend a third-party reporting solution. And that's one of the other nice things about the whole Microsoft ecosystem is it's not just that, well, we need to customize, or what Microsoft says now, we need to extend. No, it's not about that anymore. It's about apps. So if you go to AppSource, I think it's apps.microsoft.com. There you'll be able to see basically applications that have been built for Dynamics 365 that are plugged in. And these applications have been vetted by Microsoft and have passed Microsoft certification. So from an end user perspective, there's a lot of there's a lot of power there in terms of like, well, if I want to add more functionality to the application, I don't need to say, well, how much is my partner going to charge me to customize? Well, let's see if someone else already built this. And it has kind of that Android app, Google Play ecosystem approach, where you look it up. Oh, these guys have already built it. How many clients do they have? Oh, they have several thousand. So we know it's a stable solution. And then it plugs in to finance and operations. One of the additional features before we get into Management Reporter that I forgot to mention is what's called Microsoft Release Waves. So let me get a sip of water here. Microsoft Release Waves. Microsoft every 6 months, April and October, Microsoft releases new product functionality. And again, this is part of the whole digital transformation that I mentioned earlier. Microsoft is constantly, and this is one of the nice things about migrating to a cloud-based solution. Microsoft looks at the telemetry, i.e., how are people using the application and what people are requesting. If you go to ideas.microsoft.com, you can post an idea of what additional functionality you believe the application should have. And so Microsoft is reviewing these, and every 6 months, you can go to, I'm throwing out a lot of links, which maybe I'll put together later on and send out to everyone. Roadmap.dynamics.com, and you can see what functionality, additional features Microsoft is going to add on the October release or the April release. So now you have a roadmap. You know, all right, I'm in finance. If I go to roadmap.dynamics.com and I go to D365 Finance, I'm going to see a list of all these additional functionality that's coming down the pipeline to make my life, to make the finance and accounting department's life that much easier. And so those are one of the core benefits of a cloud-based solution, as well as working with a product like Dynamics 365 for finance. All right, so I mentioned Management Reporter. Why don't I like Management Reporter? Again, it's a great tool if you have simple, non-complex financial reporting. If you're starting to get into complex financial reports, then it becomes a little bit more, we recommend using a third-party solution. Now, one of the benefits of, I'll just generate a quick financial, one of the benefits of of Management Reporter is that it's an end-user tool. So a lot of tools, like Hyperion and so forth, you need to have individuals who are pretty sharp in understanding the tool because of the depth and breadth of the application, of how much functionality it has. Management Reporter is actually quite simple to use. It uses a building block approach. And that building block approach is basically columns, rows, and trees. So this is it's generating in the background. But what I'm going to do, though, is I want to show you what that means, what a column, row, and tree is. Oh, that's odd. Oh, well, this is a test environment, so that makes sense. All right, sorry. This is a test environment. I apologize. But if you'd like to view Management Reporter, we'll be more than happy to show you. And again, it's rows, columns, and trees. And you can create your tree would be your org structure. It can be by department, and it can be by legal entity. You can have as many reports as you like. And so that's why if you have simple reporting, you can create deep financial reports that at the click of a button will run, and you can also schedule them out. So you can have them published once a week in a SharePoint site where the management team can log in and review. Or The other option is you can always go to your create a workspace that makes sense for an end user, a C-suite individual or manager or VP, where they can see business Power BI reports at any time they like. All right. Minimize this here. Here's my report. Let's go back to it. Hold on a second. Here's the report. Apparently I'm Charlie in the system. So here you can modify this. You can put your logos. A lot of our clients do that. And this is just a 12-month rolling single column. So this is a very simple P&L, but gives you an idea of the options that are available. Let's see if we have one that's a little bit more complex. These are all test reports that we have. Oh, but we haven't run this. Yeah, that's all right. So we get a high level of. Now, one of the other benefits from a finance perspective, and this goes back to what I mentioned earlier in the agenda, is the unification of the data. At the end of the day, we want to be able to pull information across the system. And the finance, Dynamics 365 Finance, the modules that come with the system out of the box basically brings in your whole organization under one umbrella. And by having that one umbrella, you're able to, again, report and consume the information you need quickly and easily. All right, so I have a few minutes for questions. I don't know if anybody would like to see something in particular. For example, the cash and bank management, we've integrated with over 60 banks. The solution itself, Dynamics 365 Finance, integrates with any bank as long as the bank allows us to integrate with them. And what do I mean by that? It's like I said one time, I go, it always works until it doesn't. We've worked with banks that surprisingly the back-end technology is very antiquated and they need to catch up. So they need to implement their systems, and these are smaller banks, in order for us to be able to integrate with them. But if you were working with a bank that has a good backbone, technological backbone, we can integrate with them at the BAI for advanced bank reconciliation, for the EDIA 20, or I think in Europe they use a different nomenclature. I forgot of OMTP. Sorry, that's one of them. So as long as the bank has the ability to integrate with them, we're able to create positive pay files. We're able to send payments. We're able to receive payments. We're able to create advanced bank reconciliation to minimize the amount of work done during the month-end process of reconciliation. Although some clients like to reconcile every day, if you're talking about tens of thousands of transactions, it starts becoming very difficult, and then the electronic reconciliation piece is critical for your operations. Budgeting. Everyone, obviously, budgets are critical for your operations. So within the budgeting piece, we have what's called basic and advanced. What's the difference between one and the other? Basic is you create a budget based upon a figure. So you have an account, and that account for 2021 will the budget for the month of January will be $100. For February, it's going to be $200, or for the whole year, it's $1,000. Advanced budgeting delves a little deeper, actually quite a bit deeper. Within advanced budgeting, you can put in controls. So, for example, we have purchase order requisitions, and let's say your office paper budget for the month of January is $1,000. That's quite a bit. Well, it's not really a lot of paper. And so people have to create purchase order requisitions in order to purchase. If they create a POR and the account associated with office paper supplies is reaching the budget limit, and you can put a control. It could be 70%, 80%, 90%, 95%. Finance, D365 Finance will immediately notify you and say, hey, you're reaching your limit. And you can click and say, yes, okay, no problem, or you have to have someone override. So you can create these controls to make sure your organization is within budget and it's meeting or at the end of the day, the goal is below budget. Additionally, you can create With the advanced budgeting, you can create budgeting across departments. So you can create different budgeting profiles across departments, which then can be exported to Excel, where an end user with a department head will fill out their information, upload it back into F&O, into D365 Finance, and then you can create a consolidated company-wide budget. So those are just some of the small feature sets that, from a finance perspective, really impact the way you work. Additionally, everyone, unless you're a not-for-profit, even then, deals with credit and collections. So we need to get paid, and obviously you need to pay your vendors. And the credit and collections piece is obviously one of the greatest ways of getting in front of your clients in such a manner where you don't feel obtrusive, but you're letting them know that, hey, you need to pay us. An example of this would be the automatic notification. So you have open activities, cases, but additionally, the system, Dynamics 365 Finance, can create automatic notifications to your clients. So they might send a friendly email after their 60 days or 30 days over. And then they might send a little bit more strongly worded email 2 weeks after you're over 30 days. And then after that, that might initiate a follow-up call. And that can be one of your activities. And then your credit and collections department can follow up with a call. And then additionally, once you open up a case, you can also track that case. So let's say, for example, I'm speaking with this particular customer, and I can enter in information about this particular case. So my communications, I can send statements, I can post letters, I can say, well, we're going to reimburse you, I can view my transactions. All this information I have available to me. And so that simplifies my day-to-day operations, and it improves the overall health of the organization by increasing cash flow. Oh, all right, so it's 9:45 my time. So I'm going to open it up to any questions. Is there anything anybody would like to see in particular? If not, we can always I can always give you 15 minutes more back of your time, or you can call or email us, and we can have a different conversation offline. We're here to help. Let me ask you. All right. Okay, so here's a question. So, all right, so what's the cost difference between Dynamics 365 Finance and Business Central? Business Central is very inexpensive. It's $70 a user, and there's no minimum, so you can have one user. D365 Finance is $180 per user. Yes, but you have to have a minimum of 20. And the reason you need to have a minimum of 20 is because your Microsoft is providing multiple servers to you. So you're getting a development environment, a UAT, a user acceptance testing environment, and a production environment. Additionally, Microsoft doesn't charge you for legal entities, adding entities, or anything as such. So it's, as I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, D365 Finance is geared more towards enterprise or complex business processes, as well as manufacturing. If you have, it has a stronger manufacturing suite than Business Central. Okay, so customizations or enhancements. So yeah, what happens is that it's a very common one. So everyone's afraid. So the question is, if you enhance the application or customize it, would a release wave, either release wave 1 or release wave 2, would it break the enhancement? And the answer to that is, it could happen. It could happen. You always want to be as transparent, but it has not. In our experience, it has not happened. And I'll explain to you why. So the way Microsoft has changed the code approach is, and I think this is the best and right approach, both for the client and as well as for the partner, is that now when you create an extension, customization, you have to create it within the development environment that Microsoft provides. Microsoft then you request Microsoft to transfer that code from the development environment to your UAT environment. We, your partners, no longer have access to be able to do that. In the old days, on premise, you would tell your partner, "Hey, go ahead and do it," and it might break because a proper step wasn't met. Whatever the case might be, there was a hurry. The client wanted it in production immediately, and so best practices weren't followed, and then you had issues, and then there was fights, and it was a fun time to be a partner. But now with the way that Microsoft approaches the transferring of or the code is once the code is written in dev, we request that Microsoft transfers that code from dev to UAT, and that might take up to 24 hours. They generally do it very fast, but I always put the disclaimer: it might take up to 24 hours. So before Microsoft transfers it, Microsoft reviews that code, compiles that code to make sure that that code won't break F&O. So if Microsoft applies a service pack because it found a bug in the system, and they'll do that in an evening, your code, the code that was created, won't break F&O. So that's the benefit of that. Now, that being said, you still, best practices is you always review code. Whenever a new release wave is coming out, you always review the code or any customizations you've done to make sure that your code continues working. F&O is going to work, but your code continues working. And that gets into the upgrades, another question on upgrades. So what does it cost for the release waves 1 and 2? There's no cost. It's part of your licensing. So as mentioned earlier, every 6 months, Microsoft will release a new functionality, and that's just part of your licensing. And this holds true, by the way, for all the Microsoft business solutions, as well as your Office 365 solutions. So if you work with Office 365 online, you'll notice that sometimes your desktop will ask you to shut down all your Office products as it updates. The same will hold true with Dynamics 365. So in that regard, for our clients, it's been a huge boon from a cost perspective. Upgrades can be costly. So upgrades that would be $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $1 million, $2 million, that doesn't happen anymore. So what happens now is that you have iterative changes, iterative updates. So every 6 months, our clients engage us and they say, "Hey, can you do a quick review of the code?" Or actually, we're proactive. We let them know. For minimal compared to the past, every 6 months, we review our code. We make sure it's working. It costs $5,000, $10,000. Client's happy, and they move on. As opposed to every 5 years, they got to do a rip and replace, or every 2 years because they don't want to do the yearly upgrade. They have to do an upgrade because now their system is old, and it's going to cost them $300 to $400. It really, from a cost perspective, our clients are extremely happy with the way Microsoft is managing. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Again, I want to thank everyone so much for your time today. I hope this was beneficial. I know that we kind of covered quite a few things simply because there's a lot to cover and not enough time. But if you'd like some additional information or like to learn more, by all means, please reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions and assist you with anything you may have. Thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.